my fellow comic book collectors, it's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. I've been running around all day. This should be an interesting video. Lots of questions to get to. I'm recording this really late at night, so I've been just very busy day. So, but I really wanted to do as much as possible to show you some cool books. And let's get into it. The first question comes from K. Munin. And he asks, on your Friday, May 24th live stream, you briefly mentioned that your local comic shop is closing. What is the rarest comic you purchased from that store? Well, that store was mainly modern. It was pretty much all modern. And pretty much the rarest thing you would get would be a retailer incentive or maybe a 1 in 25 variant. I did show in one of the streams recently that I picked up a Harley Quinn 1 in 25. So that's probably the rarest. Nothing super rare is my point. What comic books / characters were you first introduced by the store staff? Nothing. They didn't really introduce me to anything, to tell you the truth. So yeah, I only went there for about a year. So I just moved to Ottawa. So I was pretty new in terms of being a customer, and I was pretty, I didn't really purchase that much from them. Like, I mean, I purchased the weekly stuff, but I didn't purchase anything too weird or bizarre or anything. And there was really not much that was introduced to me. I kind of already knew what I was looking for. And I would just pick up whatever crazy good girl cover there was. So yeah, so as always, thanks for your insight, and sorry to hear your local store is closing. I'll go to one that's just actually just slightly further down the street, so it's not too bad, but it is a shame. It was a good store. I liked it. So next question comes from Stepify. Hi, Alan. My question for you is, what is the origin and the first appearance of Betty Boop? Who created her and when? Why did King Features Syndicate not put her in any of their anthology titles, King Comics, Ace Comics, or Magic Comics? Lastly, what was her first appearance in a regular comic book? Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so it's Max Fleischer that produced Betty Boop. And if you're not familiar with Betty Boop, I did recently pick up, and I did show it in the live stream actually, Betty Boop, The Great Break. This is that book. So this is Betty Boop. Very popular character, but this character has a weird history to her. So Betty Boop originally appeared in like 1933 in the comic strips. And then later was in like little short movies and stuff like that. And was fairly popular as a cartoon character. And she, appeared in lots of little strips. Like, I actually found a video on YouTube which has like her cartoons from like the 30s into the 40s. And it's 4 hours long. So you can imagine that's a lot of little cartoons. So she was a very popular character. But she was kind of a troubled character in several ways. One, the Fleischer family was always fighting over her rights, and basically she was tied up in lawsuits. Like I think King Feature sued the Daily Mirror to prevent her from being printed. It's like, and then Fleischer sued Paramount, for the fact that she was animated. And then, there's like all these lawsuits back and forth. If you look at the history, even up till this year, there was a recent person who did a black version of Betty Boop, and then she was sued by the family for for the fact that they didn't want to promote this different version of the Betty Boop character. So it's just crazy number of lawsuits. So that's kind of the reason why it was not in the comics. There was just too many issues with the character. Also, the character wasn't necessarily most appropriate for kids. So I think those are kind of the reasons why it never appeared in any of the comics. It did appear in a few comics, though, and I'll get into that history right now. Now, Whitman produced a comic book, big little book, called Betty Boop in Snow White. Now, that's the first kind of published book with Betty Boop in it. And that's from 1934, and it's issue 11119. Then they produced another book, which is Betty Boop, Miss Gulliver's Travels, which is 1935. She was also in a Tijuana Bible in 1935. But then it wasn't until like there was like a sort of large format comic that was produced in 1963, January 1st, 1963, called De Flintstones entre Van Helen. That's my bad impersonation of German. And that was a German book with Flintstones, but it had like a short story with Betty Boop in it. That was from 1963, but it's larger format, so I don't know if that really counts. And actually, from the 30s all the way until present, there's been like different fanzines with Betty Boop in it. But those fanzines, like the early ones from the 30s, didn't actually have her printed. She was just, it was like text. It's not even, you didn't see what she looked like. It was just text. It wasn't until Flair created Betty Boop that you get a closer to magazine or comic book format, similar to the way Garfield books look like. They're a bit like they're square bound, and like a thing with just different strips of Betty Boop. That was in 1975. So it's many years later that we're getting closer to a comic book. Then there was Nell the Horse from 1983, number 5. So Nell the Horse number 5 had paper dolls in it that you could basically, cut the paper dolls out, and you could use those to dress the different characters from the comic book. But one of the things that you could dress the character up as was Betty Boop. But it's still not quite Betty Boop. So sort of Betty Boop, not really. The first comic book format book with Betty Boop in it was Betty 3D from 1986, and that's the earliest I can find. I searched through lots of books, and that was the earliest one I could find that's a definitive comic book, not a fanzine, not a magazine, not a book, but actually a comic. So yeah, and that's a cheap book to pick up. You can pick it up for about $10. It's not an expensive book, and it just happens to be the first appearance of Betty Boop in comics. Very odd. I don't know why, but yeah, Betty Boop, character that I really liked. I remember as a kid, Betty Boop was huge. Like there was always like T-shirts with Betty Boop and watches with Betty Boop like on the face, and a whole bunch of different things. Alarm clocks with Betty Boop. She was a really popular character, and I don't know why she wasn't in comics. Like, other than the lawsuits, maybe the risqueness. I don't know. Okay, so the next question comes from Troy Evans. I just acquired Wonder Woman 108. Okay, so Wonder Woman 108, where is it? Where did I put it? I have it handy somewhere. So I'm going to show it just because he's asking about it. So Wonder Woman 108. Boom, boom, that's this book. So Wonder Woman 108 from 1959. Early Silver Age in a 4.0 raw with great gloss. I noticed that a lot of YouTube videos of collectors trying to complete their run of Wonder Woman, it's always missing from their collection. I personally think it's one of the best Silver Age covers of Wonder Woman and seems rare. Actually, so it's not that rare. Okay, just so you know, the census, I'll give you the census numbers around it. So, for example, 109 has 100, no, sorry, 109 on the census, which is the issue after, has 31 issues on the census. 110 has 40. And 108, which is this book, has 56. So it's actually more common than the other issues nearby. So it's not that rare, but it is a cool book. It's rare for modern books, and it's rare compared to Marvel of the same era, but it's not one that people got graded for the most part because it's less valued than some of the other books. Goes for, you know, $50 to $100 kind of level, and if it's in high grade, obviously it goes for a lot more. Yeah, so Wonder Woman 108 is a great cover. I actually really like the cover. Like the fact that, you know, there's like these, she's getting shot at, or I think those, you know, it's like shot at right across, and she's wanted. You know, it's a really great, and I like the shadow thing going on. This is one of the better covers from the Silver Age. Actually, Silver Age Wonder Woman, kind of hit or miss. Like, not even hit, mostly miss. Like, I don't know. I don't really like most Silver Age Wonder Woman covers. There are a few good ones, and I'll show some. And I'll tell you how this ranks in those. So I'll show you some. Now, we got to start with the first. So the first Silver Age Wonder Woman was Wonder Woman 98. And I like this cover. Actually, this is my favorite Silver Age cover. And it's the very first one. I like the fact that she's doing Sotogari, which is a judo move. So, yeah, definitely Soto, or maybe Soto. It's wrapped around the leg. I don't know. That'd almost be like, yeah, some kind of, almost like a hook, which is a little different. But yeah. They might even call it Sotogake, but that's different and usually on the heel. Okay, sorry, I'm going judo mode. Okay, but it's definitely like that would actually be very dangerous. Don't do that. If you're gonna throw Sotogari, it's like, don't wrap your foot around. But I like it because it has judo. It has 2 Wonder Womans. What's better than 1 Wonder Woman? 2 Wonder Womans. Okay, so, and it's just a really cool one. This one, it's the book that basically launched the Silver Age because it retold the origin of Wonder Woman. And this shows the games that she had to participate in order to earn the right to be Wonder Woman. So just a really cool book. So that's my favorite of the Silver Age covers even. But I'll show you some others that I like. So we got this one. I really like this one. I just like, you know, giant versions of Wonder Woman. We got little Wonder Tot or whatever her name is. Yeah, so giant Wonder Woman. And then we got a shark cover. I like shark covers. They always draw sharks really funny. So I like this one. And you got, I think that's Steve Trevor under the water, and he's in his airplane. It's just really crazy. So I think this is a cool cover. So those are my top 3, I would say. But this would be definitely number 4. So that's how I rate them. I really do like this cover too. So, and then there's not really that many others. There's a few that are okay, but I actually really like this one. There's a couple with dinosaurs I thought were kind of cool, but I really yeah, I like this one too. Okay, so I rated as number 4 of the Silver Age. So one of the best. Okay. Now somebody else asked about something similar to Wonder Woman. I still have to show more Wonder Woman, which is kind of weird, but let's get into it. What is the longest running title which you have every single issue? Well, Wonder Woman is actually the one I have every single issue of Wonder Woman from the first series of Wonder Woman. Now, the first series of Wonder Woman, and do I have it handy? Where did I put it? Gotta sort my stuff out here a bit. Wonder Woman started with, obviously, issue number 1. So this is Wonder Woman number 1. A really great cover. So, I mean, this is way better than the Silver Age stuff. it ran 329 issues. So the very final issue, which I have, is this one. And it even says final issue. 48 final issue. And actually, it's a pretty cool cover. I think it's a Perez cover. It kind of looks like Perez. Does it say? Nah, doesn't say. Kind of has that Perez look to it. So yeah, so this is the last issue. So I have every issue in between as well. So Wonder Woman is the longest running title that I have. So 329 issues. Now, and what made you want to complete the title? Well, actually, since I was a kid, I actually liked Wonder Woman. She was kind of one of she was at one point my favorite female superhero. Actually, maybe even my favorite hero. I really liked Wonder Woman. I thought she was cool. I grew up watching the original live action Wonder Woman series. So I really liked that. I thought she was cute. And yeah, so I had a bit of a crush on Wonder Woman as a kid. So I always wanted to, and I always felt like it was underrated as a kid. I always felt like nobody really collected Wonder Woman. It was just such an underrated title compared to like other titles like Flash or Green Lantern or some of the other titles like Superman or Batman. I always thought Wonder Woman is so cool. Why is she underrated? So I always wanted to have a complete run of Wonder Woman. So that's kind of the reasoning behind it. Also, is there one you would like to complete that you haven't? Okay, so another title that I'm always wanted to complete is an EC title. I just wanted to complete one EC title at least. Later on, I'll probably go for a second EC title. But I chose one particular EC title, and I'll show you actually the bookend. So when I collect comics, I try to go for the first issue and the last issue first. So to have those bookends. This is the bookend, the last issue of the EC title that I decided that I really wanted to get the complete run of. And I'm almost there. I only have like 5 issues that I'm missing. But it is like Crime Suspense Stories number 27 is the last issue. And I just think EC books are cool in general. You know, and it's one of those easier... I make it sound like it's really easy. No, it's not super easy, but easier pre-code horror title to collect. There's just a lot more copies out there than some of the other pre-code horror comics, which are just incredibly rare. You know, typically you'll see pre-code horror comics having like maybe 20 issues or 30 issues on the census, whereas EC might have 100 or 300 copies available on the census. So it's just a much more readily available comic. So I thought this is a good one to go for. You know, just a simple, well, not super simple, but, you know, easier. I keep on stressing that because it's not that easy. But it is easier, and it's not that cheap either. It's kind of expensive run because a lot of collectors like EC comics. So it's one that I've been working on. And hopefully I'll finish soon. Okay, so now back to the regular other questions. JSS Brooklyn wrote, okay, for a fun question, I hope not to box you in, what are your favorite covers from the Atomic Age from your collection? Great Joker covers, by the way. Okay, so I showed Joker covers in the last video, so you can check that out. Definitely a good video to watch. I recommend actually, if you haven't already, just watch all my previous Q&A videos because there's actually a lot of great information. I actually do a lot of research for these videos, so I recommend you check those out. But Atomic Age is actually one of those really interesting ages. Probably, if any age of comics, if you could just pick one age and say, what is the greatest age of all comics? Well, the Atomic Age might be it. And I'll explain that because a lot of people will be like, what? You're a Golden Age collector. Atomic Age is one of those weird ages. If you use the regular gold, silver, bronze, copper kind of way of framing all the ages, well, Copper Age doesn't exist. Atomic Age, I should say. Atomic Age doesn't exist in that framework. But there are people that see the Atomic Age as sort of one of these overlapping ages, where it's both golden and silver. And it goes really from 1946 all the way up to maybe 1957. Some people take it all the way up to 1960. So it's sort of like one of these weird ages that kind of goes from mid golden to mid silver. So just sort of a weird age. And it's one that is marked by a very interesting phenomena. And that was the atomic bomb. So I figured I should show one atomic bomb cover. It's not necessarily the best. World War III is probably the best atomic bomb cover. But Atomic Attack is poor man's World War III. So this one, you get the idea. Well, that is what marked the beginning of the atomic age. The idea that there's this bomb out there that can do mass devastation. So that's kind of one of those things that define the age and the mark of the beginning of it. And it really did, the dropping of the bomb really did have a massive influence on the comic market for a bunch of reasons. One, it ended the war. That was kind of a big thing. And the other thing is, all of a sudden people started thinking about radiation and devastation on a much bigger scale than ever had been thought of before. So you get like these weird sci-fi kind of elements happening, and you get this weird kind of like mutations ideas coming in, and that will play a bigger role in the Silver Age, where you get like actual mutants with X-Men and all those ones. But it really did change the era. The other thing that was big is, as I said, it ended the war. And when the war ended, all of a sudden you get all the guys coming back from the war, and superheroes were kind of associated with the war effort. And that was not a good thing. People had enough war at that point. They were like, we're done. Good, no more war for us. And so superheroes kind of waned, but they still wanted to sell comics. So what do you do? Nobody's really interested in superheroes anymore because of that association to the war effort. Let's get away from the war. Let's have something that's a little bit maybe lighthearted. So you get the advent of several different things. So this is why I say the Atomic Age is possibly one of the best ages. And I'll get really into this now. And I'll show you some books for it too. So I'm not just going to babble about the age. I'm going to show you a bunch. Actually, I grabbed a bunch. But I didn't show you maybe the best, but I'm going to show you a sampling, if that makes sense. So what happened was, you got people, the GIs coming back. Well, you're going to sell comics that appeal to this new interest. And what it was is they started with Good Girl. So Good Girl was really, really popular from 1946 to like 1949 was kind of a Good Girl era. But then after that, you get the movement towards romance, towards pre-code horror, towards crime books. So you get all these new genres forming that didn't really exist before. And that's why it's a really great age, because it has all this creativity in terms of the types of comics that existed. And that's kind of what I'm going to show you in a bit of this. We're going to start with the Good Girl. I'm going to show one of the grails of the Good Girl art movement, and it's Archie number 50. And this kind of encapsulates a lot of the Atomic Age elements. You got that 50s sweater girl. This is actually 1951. It's right in the middle of the Atomic Age. And, it's got that humor, a little bit more fun element to it. And, a bit of innuendo. So that's one. And as I was saying, crime was another big genre that kind of formed. It actually started with Crimes Does Not Pay number 24 was the very first crime book. That's early 40s. But it really hit its stride all the way into the like end of the golden age, or like 1955 era. And that's here's a good example of a great cover from pre-code horror, not pre-code horror, but crime. This is Underworld Crime, just a great hot poker, crazy cover. Guy in bondage in the back, girl in bondage in the front, and just a great cover. I just love this cover. So this is Underworld Crime number 7. And then, as I was saying, sci-fi became a big thing. And there was elements that kind of got mixed in, which was Good Girl kind of got mixed in with sci-fi. And I think a really great cover that kind of encapsulates those two elements and that kind of like futuristic thing, like, you know, because as I said, the atomic bomb kind of represented the future. Like, it's like, wow, we can do this incredible thing now. Not necessarily a good thing, but incredible thing. And so that really inspired a lot of sci-fi movement. So here's a nice sci-fi one. This is Startling Comics number 49, the Bender cover. And it's got that Good Girl as well. So this is Alex Schomburg. And that's another thing about the Atomic Age. You got some of the major awesome artists. A lot of the artists had now returned back from the war, and they're producing comics, like Alex Schomburg and Matt Baker, and you know, just a whole bunch were just back and producing some amazing comics. So yeah, Startling Comics number 49. And I did mention horror, so I'm going to show two horror comics. I'm going to show you one of my favorites, one of my favorite horror covers, and it's a Maurice Whitman cover, and it's Ghost Comics number 2. And I always love this cover. It's got that lingerie kind of cover as well. It's just a really cool one. You get these little figments of her nightmare. And you got the ghost in the background right there. I always thought this was a great cover. So Ghost Comics number 2. Nice pre-code horror. And then at the tail end of the Atomic Age, just before it became Silverish Age, you get some of the craziest pre-code horror covers. So I'm going to show you one crazy pre-code horror cover, and kind of marks the near end of the Golden Age and moving into that Silver Age era, which is, and this is a good one, a good example of the craziness. So this is Witch's Tales number 25. It's a decapitation cover. You get the head and the bell. It's just a crazy cover. It's just like, I mean, it's just like so gruesome, right? And this kind of marks that end point for how extreme that they could go with some of the comic covers. I mean, there's some pretty crazy covers for the Atomic Age. And, you know, that's part of the reason why the ages kind of ended. Now, there was, as I said, it kind of overlapped into that Silver era because it went until 1957. And really what marked the end of what's considered the Atomic Age is the return of the superheroes. So it's sort of, if you think about it, the Atomic Age ended up starting with the fall of the superheroes and ended up, it was interesting. So the video is going to be a little bit of a weird cut here, but sorry about that. I ran out of space on my phone. So, but just to finish up what I was saying, the Silver Age, you know, the start of the, you know, superhero comics really marked the end of the Atomic Age of comics. Wow. So you got the Atomic Age starting with the fall of the superheroes, and the Atomic Age ending with the rise of the superheroes. So it's an interesting how it kind of went full cycle. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed those covers from the Bronze Age, or Bronze Age. Why do I keep on saying Bronze Age? Atomic Age. And yeah, let's get into the next question. Sorry about the cut. Is there any technique to stop further deterioration of already rusted staples in a comic? Yeah, so I looked into this one. There's a few answers that I found. Most people, like if there's a comic that you have that has rusted staples, generally the most common advice for that is to remove the staples and replace it with staples of the same period. That will be, you'll get a conserved grade for doing that, just so you know. Because generally what will happen is there'll be like signs that the staples have been replaced, and you'll get a conserved grade for that if you do try to get it graded. You can also just remove the staples, and then you'll have like a comic without staples, which again will get you a green label. That's because it's considered incomplete at that point. So that's things you can do. If you just want the book in your collection and to protect it, remove the staples will kind of be the best option. Another option is to clean the staples, where you kind of try to remove that outer layer of rust. And you can put like Vaseline. I know it's weird, but put a little bit of Vaseline on it, and that'll actually act as a coating to protect the staples from rusting. That's another method. Another thing is rust actually happens due to moisture plus oxygen. So if you can keep the comic in a mylar, where you reduce the amount of oxygen it gets, or makes it basically zero, where it's in a vacuum, then that will stop, or at least slow down the rust formation. So those are kind of the only things you can do. Rusted staples is a bad thing for the most part. I actually just picked up a major book with rusted staples, because generally what will end up happening is the staples will deteriorate. You'll get what's called rust migration, where it actually starts affecting the paper around the staple. It'll just get like around the staple. It's not gonna like take over the whole book or anything like that, but it will just spread around the staple. And eventually what'll happen is it will deteriorate enough where it will detach the cover from the book. So those are things to be aware of. It's annoying. It's one of those annoying things, because staples aren't really designed, at least a lot of the Golden Age ones especially, weren't really designed to, prevent rust. It's only the more modern staples that are galvanized that really will prevent staple rust. So sorry about that, but yeah, it's one of those things. It's really annoying. A lot of people actually will avoid buying comics with staple rust because of that reason. So just something to be aware of. But yeah, not much I can tell you other than that. You also asked, can you show Marvel's greatest comics reprint covers for Fantastic Four 48, 49, and 50? Well, I don't have those, so I can't show those. So sorry on that one. But they're actually, if you want to get the Marvel, like if you want to get those specific issues, you'd want to get issues Marvel's Greatest Comics number 35, 36, and 37, which reprints 48, 49, and 50. They generally actually go for quite a bit of money, anywhere from about $20 on the low end to about 50. So fairly expensive for a reprint. And they do have very unique covers, very different than the original. So yes, I actually do see that as a good spec, by the way, because even though they're fairly expensive, as I said, like $20 to $50, they are unique covers. So, and they are reprinting some pretty major stories, so might be actually worth picking those ones up. But I don't generally pick up reprints, so I don't have that many reprints in my collection. So sorry about that. I like what I buy wrote, do you have any manga or anime first appearance in comic book format? Yes, I do. I actually have Sailor Moon and Pikachu and a bunch of characters, but I'm going to show you the ones that I could find easily. The Sailor Moon, I don't know where I put it. I also have like a whole bunch of other characters, Parasite and what's it called? My Hero Academia, and a whole bunch of ones. I have a bunch of anime related first appearances. I also have, yeah, a whole bunch. But I'm going to show you the ones that I could find handy. but these are good ones, so bear with me on that. Okay, so these shows I watched as a kid. We got Star Blazers, so pretty cool show. Battleship Yamato, where they fly in this big battleship. Really great series. I believe this is the first appearance of the characters. There might be another. I have another set. I'm not sure which appeared first, but I think it was this one. And then we got Battle of the Planets, which is another great series. And you got all the major characters there, and they would always be like different, like kind of bird-like characters. Yeah, so just another key first appearance. So that's Battle of the Planets and Star Blazers. And probably the biggest anime character comic that I have would be Astro Boy. And this is his first appearance. So Astro Boy #1. Very cool comic. Actually, one of my earliest ones. Another one I have, which is Akira, would be another kind of key anime character. I have a bunch. I just have a bunch. And actually, speaking of Akira, it gets me into the next question. I'll explain that in a second. Starchild wrote, do you have any comic books that you have multiple copies of? Well, Akira #1 is one I had 3 copies of. And I've actually gotten rid of, I think, 2 of them, to my extra 2. So I have my 1 copy of it, but I got rid of 2. I use them as trade. It was a good way to get some trade. And they're really good for trading. So yeah, so that was what I used them for. But I also had other things that I have multiple copies of. If you actually look behind me, there's a big box right there. That's on the floor. There's a big box. And that big box actually has my trade with Big Beam McFly, the comic guy. And I'm basically going to be giving him, well, we're trading. I'm trading him a whole bunch of comics, and he just traded me a whole bunch of comics. And I'll show that in a future unboxing where it's a massive collection, just a crazy big collection of comics that he's traded with me and I'm trading with him. He's gotten some pretty amazing books. Actually, it's a pretty good trade. We both did extremely well on it, but I traded a lot of my dupes. So pretty much I've been reduced in terms of my dupes to just a handful of dupes now. I have maybe 1 box worth of dupes. I'll show you some of the ones that I have. Where did I put them? I gotta find them. Okay, it's like here. Bear with me. So here's some magazine dupes that I have. So we got Vampirella. Vampirella #7, a nice Fazetta cover. It's got a big chunk out of it here, though. That's the only problem with it. Even in this grade, it goes for a fair amount. But this is one of my dupes. And we got Eerie 135. It's, again, another little bit rough grade, so it's a San Julian cover. Just a really cool one. And for some reason, I kept on buying this one. I don't know why I got multiple copies of this. I don't know why I keep on buying this one. Or it would be in lots that I'd buy. So this is Castle of Frankenstein. And then it's got a cool back cover as well. So yeah, very cool, actually. Okay, and we got another Castle of Frankenstein. I don't know why. I like this one. I think this is 100 BC or something, or 1 million years BC or something like that. I don't know. So that's cool. And then we got another. This is an interesting one. This is actually Eerie from Australia. You can tell by the M. This is an Australian edition Eerie. These are quite rare. Unless you're in Australia, maybe it's a little easier to get there. And then we got a Spirit. Nice Will Eisner, The Spirit, #4. Really nice copy, actually. I just happen to have another one that's even higher grade. So those are all my dupes that I still have. What would happen is I would either get lots where they would have like certain issues that I was chasing after, but extra issues of ones that I had already and that, you know, were better. So generally that's, or another method was I would upgrade a comic and have a dupe of it. So I usually, what I do is I put them all into a box and then these are my trading fodder for later in life. So those are my dupes. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed seeing some of my duplicate comics. The last question comes from Steve Driscoll. I hope I'm saying his name. I'm just keep on changing the way I say his name, but I think it's Driscoll or Driscoll. Maybe it's Driscoll. Actually, Driscoll, I think. Steve, you can tell me. I see these names and I never hear them, so I just assume that I'm saying it correct. Okay, last question. Would you please compare Swamp Thing and Man Thing? I get them confused. Okay, so Swamp Thing made his first appearance in House of Secrets 92. Man Thing which was a comic actually, and Man Thing made his first appearance in Savage Tales magazine #1. So that is a little bit of a difference. One's in a comic first and one's in a magazine first. Swamp Thing was created by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson. Man Thing was created by Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Gary Conway, and Gray Morrow. And they both had very similar stories. They were both scientists. They both had some horrible accident. Their wives get killed. That's another common feature. And they both get mutilated in some weird way that they become a swamp monster. Where they basically get mixed in genetically to the core with the swamp. And they both have like a sardonic character. Swamp Thing has John Constantine that kind of helps him. And Man Thing has Howard the Duck. So they both have their own little sidekick kind of, well, I wouldn't call them sidekicks, but sort of a character related to them that kind of assists them. Now, that's where the similarities kind of fade, because then we get, Swamp Thing is kind of more horror and godlike. That's like Swamp Thing. He's like the protector of the green, and he basically has like the powers of the green, and he's like sort of almost godlike in terms of his power. He can appear anywhere in the world. He can do amazing things just through the power of the green, and he's like he's kind of got that mythical power, and but he also encaptures like this kind of pre-code horror or horror elements to Swamp Thing. So very different style than Man Thing, who is more like fantastical. He has like the nexus of all realities, and he's more of a down to earth. That sounds weird, but he's less like godlike. He's more basic in terms of his powers. He does have the power to burn those who know fear. So if they are evil, he can burn them to a crisp. So that's kind of cool. But that's really the differences. Their kind of power levels are very different. And as a result, I guess people like the power ones because Swamp Thing is the more popular of the two. So hopefully that's a good rundown of the two characters, and I hope you enjoyed that. If you have questions that you want to ask me, and I will do a better job. Hopefully I'll have a little bit more sleep and a little bit more energy. I had a long day. Ask the questions below, and I'll do my best to answer them and show some cool books in the process, and do some research for you. I actually did a lot of research for this video. It took me a long time to come up with all the answers. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully I gave actually correct answers. I thought, yeah, that's all I can say. What can I say? Subscribe, like, comment, that kind of stuff. Bye for now.